Hey everyone, this is Friedel Hakaraja Raven. I'm here with my recap and review of P-Valley Season number 2, Episode number 4, titled Demethrius. Now, this episode, the things that happened in this episode, like, oof, ooh. There were comedic scenes, there were scenes that made me gasp, and then there were also scenes that were, in my opinion, quite well handled when it came to certain political situations, which we'll get to when we get to them as I recap the episode. So the episode opens up with this woman and she's having fun at the bank. She's throwing money. She has a lot of money to throw, and she's getting enamored by a whole lot of dancers over at the bank. And then she ends up getting herself a private dance. And yeah, the dancer that's dancing for her, she's the character that has allergies, and she ends up sneezing at this woman after that woman, like, she was wearing two masks. If I remember correctly, she was wearing two masks. The dancer took off one of the masks, and then she ended up taking the last mask herself. And then the sneeze came, and of course she freaked out because she was like, you know what, I ain't gonna get any. She didn't want to get any. She didn't want to get infected, and she screamed. She ran out of the private room, and that of course made Autumn, Haley, and Uncle Clifford very, very worried about what the heck was happening. And they're like, wait, what's happening? And it turns out that this woman actually works for the health sector. And she's like, you know what? No one is wearing masks over here. And yeah, it's official. You guys will have to close out the bank. And Uncle Clifford is like, wait. What do you mean no one is wearing masks? And yeah, the camera pans around. And it turns out that a whole lot of people are not wearing their masks. And yeah, the woman is correct. And she's like, yep, I am going to shut the bank down. And then we get a scene where she's like, you know what? You need to keep 6 feet distance between two people. And Haley is like, really? You want us to give lap dances from six feet away? And she's like, hey, this is my job. This is what's going to happen. You need to bring in masks. You need to bring in more sanitation. You need to add in HEPA filters and whatnot. And if you guys don't do that, I'll come back tomorrow for inspection, and if you guys don't do that, then I'm going to fine you $24,000. And as she's talking, this is where Uncle Clifford is like, wait, you know what? I seem to recognize you. And then the other woman comes in and she's like, yep, I recognize you too. And it turns out that she's apparently someone who ended up cheating on her husband with her mother-in-law, which is like, what? And the woman is like, no, it's not me. But yeah, she ends up decreasing the fine to $11,000, and she walks away and she's like, you know what, I'll be back tomorrow for an inspection, and if you guys fail, then the pink will be closed. So while all of this is happening, one of the dancers ends up talking about how roulette has diverse income streams, and there was this client who came in asking about a dancer who has de-sucking lips. And yeah, from the previous episodes we know that roulette has been giving blowjobs to certain customers in order to make more money. And she's like, this dancer is lying, she's lying. And Uncle Clifford is like, really, is she really lying? And the dancer who ends up accusing roulette, she's like, no, I ain't. And this is where roulette and the dancer end up fighting. And I was quite surprised to see that roulette knows how to fight. She's kind of a wrestler. She's got those moves. And Uncle Clifford tries to break the fight. Uncle Clifford is unsuccessful, and then Big L needs to come in. He basically picks up roulette and takes her into the office, and he's like, you know what, you need to calm down, okay? You need to calm down. And also, who taught you to fight? And she's like, my brother. He ended up teaching how to fight. And this is where Big L asks roulette about whether or not she is actually giving people blowjobs. And she's like, you know what, it's none of your business. And also, what the heck were you doing with that guy that last night? Because in the previous episode she saw Big L working with the other guy with the shipments and whatnot. And Big L doesn't say anything, and she's like, yep, let's both mind our own businesses. So Mercedes is talking to Uncle Clifford, and Uncle Clifford is like, well, the pink is in trouble, and yada 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 yada. And as these two are talking, she ends up noticing the TV, and it turns out that Mercedes' mom is actually running for mayor, because in the previous episode she ended up not liking what the mayor's name, what was it? Lil Wayne, I guess that's his name, Lil Wayne. I could be wrong. She isn't a fan of him opening a casino and whatnot, and she's like, you know what, when I run for mayor, I'm not going to allow anyone to open the casino, so if you want purity to be in Chickalisa, vote for me. So as Uncle Clifford is still talking to Mercedes, she gets a text from Coach, and it reads, "You gotta finish that Mercedes experience you started. Meet me at the condo. I fly in at 4." And from the previous episode, in the previous episode, Mercedes ended up hooking up with Coach, and she also ended up hooking up with his photographer wife, and I'm like, So I guess Mercedes is a queer character, which I'm here for it. I am here for it. So we cut to Kishan, and she's very happy because her eyelashes have officially launched. And she's like, you know what? It's bigger than I ever imagined, and yada yada yada. And then she also talks about how in the promo image her skin seems to be lightened. And the manager is like, no. That's just the light. That's just the light. So Kishan ends up going to Lil Mada, and she ends up showing him the Instagram live, showing the fight in the pink, and Lil Murder was like, okay, so that's happening. While all of this is happening, Big Teak. Okay, so Big Teak is looking at the news, and it turns out that we have another case of police brutality against a black man. And yeah, things are quite heightened. There's a lot of tension, and all of that tension does end up becoming much, much worse as the episode continues. And this is where Kishan's manager is like, hey, maybe that guy did something for the police to attack him like that, right? And yeah, Big Teak isn't having none of it. He's like, really? You're going to blame the black guy? Really? And yeah, Big Teak. This episode, we'll get to it. So Haley ends up. It's the morning. There's a knock on the door, and the knock happens later. Okay, so it's the morning. Haley wakes up, and again she feels that someone is there. B Valley is also going the supernatural route for some reason, which I'm okay with it, kind of. 20-30% supernatural. I'm here for it. It's as if she can sense a presence in the room where Montavious was killed. So there's a knock, and it turns out that it's Clifford. His name is Clifford, right? Clifford or Caleb? Clifford. My bad. I could be wrong. I could never remember his name. I'm trying. I think it's Clifford. So yeah, Clifford is here again talking to Haley about wanting to sell, because he's like, you know what, the pink is at a risk of being closed, right? So I'll offer you $1 million and whatnot. And Haley is like, you know what, the fact that you doubled your initial offer just like that means that this place is worth much, much more. So I'm going to hold out. Bye. So this entire scene, of course, I've been feeling sorry for Andre's wife, because Andre doesn't give her the attention that she needs, and he also ended up cheating on her with Haley. And so I guess the writers were like, you know what, we have to close this chapter. And it turns out that the way they decided to close this chapter is by having Andre's wife cheat on Andre with a guy who Andres knows as well. I think his name is Dante or Derek. I'm not really sure. Apparently, he's his wife's co-worker. And I'm like, really, writers, really? You couldn't figure out another way to end this chapter? You couldn't find another way to break Andre and his wife up? But yeah, she ends up cheating on Andre because Andre is never there for her. And Andre comes back home. He notices his wife giving Dante, I guess that's his name, giving Dante a blowjob. And of course he gets angry. He ends up starting to strangle him. And yeah, Andre's wife is like, let him go. He lets him go. He goes away. And this is where Andre is like, you know what? I am not surprised because he's the guy that your father wanted you to marry, not me. And yeah, the wife also asks Andre if he ended up wearing masks because she and the other guy are doctors. And I'm like, this is not the time. But anyway, this is where Andre is like, you know what? I guess this is over, and I'm going back to Chickalisa because I want to run for mayor. And she's like, really? That's your problem, Andre. My dad ended up giving you a job, you refused, and now you're going back to Chickalisa to run for mayor? Really? But yeah, I think it's over between these two. Which I'm okay with it. Because again, as I said, I was feeling sorry for Andre's wife whenever he interacted with Haley. So we cut to Mercedes going to Coach's house, and Coach's wife is there, Farah. And Farah's like, hey, I'll be out of your hair in a minute. And then these two end up talking about what happened last night. And she's like, well, it was my first time. I've never done that before. And Mercedes like, hey, I've never done that before either, but it came to us very easy, didn't it? And then she ends up explaining why she had to cut the performance short because she needed to go and help her daughter. And this is where these two bond over over Mercedes' love for her daughter. And she's like, Farah's like, well, I guess you're kind of like a super mom, aren't you? And yeah, this is where she's like, you know what, Mercedes, Coach will be here in a bit. I'll go. And Mercedes ends up pole dancing, trying to warm herself up. And Farah ends up taking pictures. And Mercedes like, wait. In the NDA you made me sign, you talked about how no photography, no nothing. So why are you doing this? And Farah's like, well, Coach isn't here, right? So I won't tell him if you won't tell him. So Mercedes just pole dancing and Farah is taking pictures of her. And I'm like, So it turns out that Big L and his partner ended up, they call him Eminem, but I don't think that's his real name. Yeah, it turns out that he's resourceful and he calls in these guys who have all the equipment, the PPE that the Pink needs, and they get to work. And because they need more people, this is where the rest of the dancers come in, and Diamond also comes in because Diamond is like, hey, I'm still in the group chat. I found out that the Pink needed help, so here I am. And then we cut to Keyshawn and Lil Murder in their tour car, and they hear DJ Scared playing on the radio, and of course they're very, very impressed because they know him. And then they talk about how DJ Scared wants a tune from Lil Murder, and he'll play that on the radio and whatnot. And yeah, Lil Deke is like, I need to listen to the actual news that's happening on the radio. And again, violence is erupting because of the police brutality case, and Deke is trying to listen to it. And again, Keyshawn's manager ends up trying to blame the victim, and he's like, you know what? We'll continue with our tour and whatnot, and we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate and whatnot. Oh, also, my bad. So it turns out that there's this curfew, which means that Lil Murder and Keyshawn won't be able to perform at Club Volcano. And yeah, again, and that's why Keyshawn's manager is like, hey, we're not going to let this setback, this curfew take us down. We're still going to celebrate. We're still going to enjoy staying at the suite. So this is where Mercedes ends up teaching Farah some moves, and she's like, hey, I want you to twerk. And she ends up helping Farah discover her twerking muscle, and it was a very, very sexy scene. And Farah ends up feeling a bit uncomfortable, and she's like, wait, I don't think I can do this. And she talks about how she thought that she was going to hate Mercedes, but she ended up hating herself. And then she's like, hey, and then she ends up telling Mercedes that Coach isn't coming here because she's the one who ended up messaging Mercedes because she wanted to meet her again. And I'm like, ooh, because yeah, Farah is very impressed by Mercedes because Mercedes is a woman who can hold her own weight. And then these two hook up, and I'm here for it. I am here for this. So Diamond is placing these boxes, and then he ends up going into the room where Montavious dies, and he ends up feeling Montavious' presence again, and he's like, this is bad. Yeah, he even experiences trouble breathing, and everyone is listening listening to the news, and this is where it turns out that and this is where they realize that there's a curfew happening, and I think the curfew is for like 8:30 p.m. and they all need to go home. And Clifford is like, wait, there's no need for you to go home. You can stay here. You can help out with the PPE and everything. And yeah, and the news about all of the violence and all of the strike that really hits Roulette a lot, quite hard, and we get to learn about that in a bit. And then Andre comes in, and Clifford jokes about how Andre looks like a man whose wife just cheated on him, and Andre's like, yup. So Roulette is crying, and Eminem, I guess. Again, his name is not Eminem, right? But yeah, this is where Roulette ends up telling Eminem that all of this violence reminds her of her brother, Demethrius, and that he was a victim of police brutality as well, and they accused him of having a gun. And Roulette is like, I know that he didn't have a gun. And she's like, you know what? this happens again to our community. And yeah, Eminem tries to comfort her, and I'm like, oh, Roulette, oh. So Diamond and Big L talk about their options because Diamond is like, I don't think that the Pink is going to keep on surviving all of these setbacks. And Big L is like, hey, Uncle Clifford is the one who gave me my first job. So as long as the Pink is here, I'm going to keep working for her. So Diamond ends up meeting this woman, this woman who is giving me like scam queen kind of, and I'm like, Diamond, don't get into too much trouble, but I guess he's going to get into trouble. So Mercedes wakes up and Farah isn't here. However, Farah did leave her a lot of money on the bedside table, and she ends up reading the group message, which is all hands on deck. The Pink being shut down. We need all hands on deck to bring the club back to code. Get here now. And Mercedes like, yep, I need to go. And then we cut to Big Teak, and yeah, he's still listening to the news, and Lil Murder wants him to relax a bit, but Big Teak can't do that, and Lil Murder's like, okay, I'll leave you to it. So Sean's manager wants to celebrate, and he shuts down the TV, and that makes Big T very, very angry. He's like, why the heck did you shut down the news? And yeah, because Sean's manager is like, hey, a guy died. A lot of violence occurred, and it's the same old story where protesters are actually burning down their own property and whatnot. And yet there's a whole argument between these two. Gidget gets involved and everything. Big T loses his temper at Gidget, and it's bad. It's just bad. And Kishan, I think Big T losing his temper reminded Kishan of Derek, and yeah, she's scared. So we cut to Uncle Clifford, and he's trying to settle some of the dancers down, and this is where they notice that someone is already staying here. So this is where Uncle Clifford realizes that yep, Haley has been living at the Pink. So Okay. So Lil Murder is trying to record a song, and this is where Big T comes in, and he ends up being in front of Lil Murder. Lil Murder gets up, and he notices Big Teak's Big D, I guess. And yeah, I'm like, what's happening here? What is happening here? And then Big Teak is in the room with Lil Murder, and Lil Murder tries to comfort him, and I'm like, oh no, is it? Do I think, yeah, these two are going to hook up, right? These two are going to hook up, and yep, Lil Murder ends up he starts kissing him after Big T tells Lil Murder that, you know what, the world doesn't care about the black community, and whether or not a black person is rich or poor or smart or not smart, they're just a black man in front of a bigoted community. However, you, Lil Murder, you're going to be successful. You're going to be all right. And yeah, these two end up hooking up, and it's a very, very steamy scene. And I'm like, Lil Murder, don't do this. You still love Uncle Clifford, and you're going to break Big Teak's heart, and that's exactly what happened. So Kishan is like, Gidget, you need to go. You're my ride or die, but you need to go. And Gidget goes. And Derek calls Kishan, but she doesn't answer his calls. And this is where the manager is like, hey, I noticed that you were scared when Big Teak lost his temper, so I'm going to fire him. And Kishan is like, don't do that. There's no need for you to fire him. And yeah, the manager is like, hey, if you ever feel afraid, I'm here for you, okay? I got you. And while that's happening, Lil Murder's manager is overhearing the conversation. And this is where Andre ends up telling Haley that, yeah, I wasn't angry at my wife cheating on me with her co-worker. I'm just angry because she laughed at my face when I told her that I'm running for mayor. And Haley's like, wait, you're running for mayor? Andrea's like, yeah. And Haley's like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, run for mayor. And then he asks about selling the Pink, and she's like, yep, I'm going to sell the Pink. And Mercedes comes to the Pink, and she's like, Uncle Clifford, I'm so sorry. I came as soon as I read the message. And Uncle Clifford is like, There's another interesting conversation happening. Let's listen. So Haley tells Andre that she plans to sell the Pink. She's just waiting for a lot of money. She doesn't care about the Pink and whatnot. And that makes Uncle Clifford very angry. He comes out and he's like, okay, so you're going to betray us, huh? You are really going to betray us. You're really going to sell the Pink. And Haley is like, Andre, you need to leave. I'll handle this situation. And this is where Haley tells Uncle Clifford that, hey, this is just a building and we can't continue trying to run the pink after setback after setback. We have to sell it for a lot of money, and it was going to happen one day. And Uncle Clifford and everyone else, all of the dancers come out too, and they're just disappointed at Haley. And Haley's like, hey, I'm a businesswoman, okay, this is just business. And Uncle Clifford is like, okay. And also, if you don't like the pink, then why the heck are you still living here? Pink gave you a place. I'm the one who let you into the pink, and now you're using the pink because you don't have anywhere else to go. And Mercedes is like, wait, I thought you were staying with a friend. And Uncle Clifford is like, a friend? This woman has no friends. Yeah, she's a anyway. So this scene basically showed us that it's basically Haley versus the entire pink, which means Uncle Clifford, Mercedes, and the rest of the dancers. So let's see what Haley is able to do. So it's the next day, and yeah, Lil Murder wakes up. Big Teak is back there, and he has a postcard in his hand, and yeah, he's like, all those years when I was in jail and all those years while you were out, you never sent me postcards. So who's Cliff? Who's Cliff, huh? And I'm like, oh no, you broke his heart. And I'm like, Big Teak, don't feel bad, but it's not Lil Murder's fault that he's in love with Uncle Clifford. And also Big Teak, I hope Big Teak finds someone. I hope he finds someone to love him as much as he loves that other person, as much as he's able. Yeah, I want Big Teak to be happy. And here I was like, wait, so is Big Teak going to leave Lil Murder and his tour? But no, that doesn't happen. He's still there. So Andre comes back home, and it turns out that his uncle ended up giving the house to Andre in his will. And Andre ends up calling Clifford, and he's like, hey, Clifford, come over to my campaign headquarters. So yeah, he's going to use the house as his headquarters. And then as the tour car is moving through the city, there's tension between Lil Murder and Big Teak, and I'm like, oh no, I still hope that they're able to remain friends, but it's going to be tough. So of course Uncle Clifford is worried about Lil Murder, and he ends up messaging him that world seem like it falling apart, ain't it? You okay? And Lil Murder doesn't respond because again, their actual world is falling apart around him, and his relationship with Big Teak is falling apart around him, so he has a lot on his plate to figure out. And then the episode closes with a shot of the car moving towards the city, which is basically burning. And the episode ends with a list of names, which with the title "To Those We Have Lost and Loved in 2020." And I'm like, oh yeah. Again, this episode had comedy, had emotion, and it was well written. So yeah, let me know what you thought of the episode down in the comment section below. And until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later.